All right, well, thank you so much for coming to the last talk of Drawing Now, the 19th edition of Drawing Now Paris. Believe it or not, this has gone by like this. And I'm really, really, really happy to introduce the second Drawing Think Tank talk, which is, it is very intentional. As Artistic Director of Drawing Now Paris, so my name is Joana P. Neves. I'm really interested in, it's been 8 years now working with in this particular space, with this particular event around drawing. It is a commercial setting, but commercial also means private collections, obviously, but also the whole ecosystem of drawing with institutions, with museums. And it has become really apparent how in different areas of Europe and the world, drawing is considered differently. It is collected differently. It is exhibited differently. Some museums have huge collections of drawing, but then they show it as a sort of alongside sculpture or installation or video. And you also have collections that are only focused on drawing, but they have a very specific scope, which was the case of our conversation yesterday with Irina Zucca Alessandrelli, whose collection, I mean, she's the curator of a collection called Ramo in Milano, which is 20th and 21st century Italian drawing. So there's so many specificities that we are kind of launching this initiative of the Drawing Think Tank, not only as talks, but also probably a network, something that we're working on for next year, because next year is our 20th anniversary. And so I'm welcoming two very different perspectives on drawing today. Isabel Seligman, who is the curator of drawings at the British Museum in London, obviously, as you very well known, and Bige Orer, who is an independent curator, who was the director, right, am I right, of the Istanbul Biennial for many, many years, and who brings us a perspective on Turkey, because personally, as a curator, I've come across so many artists from Turkey who live there or live abroad, who practice drawing in a very performative way, embodied way, that I thought it was a really good idea to bring different profiles as well, someone who's looking at drawing and someone who is exhibiting drawing, also thinking of drawing in terms of a collection in a context of a really, really historical museum. So my first question right away, I think, rather than starting right off introducing these two very specific perspectives and contexts, would be to ask you, Isabel and Bige, if you have a conception of drawing, an idea of what drawing might be, perhaps not a definition, but more kind of drawing a territory, because here at Drawing Now Paris, we do not define drawing as something on paper. And when we talk about collections, usually paper becomes sort of the default setting. And sometimes researching collections is really hard because you don't have drawing. So now the categories differ from institution to institution. And sometimes you have to just write works on paper, and then you have photography, and you're looking for drawing. So the specificities, I think, are important more as axes. As what is the plural of axis? Axis with an E. So you will hear the same thing. Okay. So as an axis, so a sort of parameter around which then you can kind of expand sometimes and maybe sometimes get closer to it. But they're useful. They're really useful to know, you know, at least kind of mark out a territory, it seems. So Isabel, would you like to give it a go?
Absolutely. I will kick things off. I think I would have to say, and this is a very boring answer, from an institutional perspective, the British Museum, I think, has a working definition of drawing, which is essentially a unique work on paper. And that is because, as you've said, we have to think about things from a kind of pragmatic perspective. You know, how are we going to store them? How are we going to keep them? We have 100% of the collection on site in Bloomsbury, in Solander boxes, in plan presses. We have very little storage room for framed works. So, oh, there it is. There's the study room right there. So while I do personally, I think drawing really could be defined as an activity, as a verb as much as a noun. The drawings that we're able to collect are primarily those on paper, although there are definitely exceptions to that rule as well, some of which we might get on to talk about later. Things on vellum, things on wood. But yes, I think that's the working definition that we use.
Thank you. So would you be freer in your definition of drawing? Are you going to be looking at the perspective that you're bringing today, Bige?
Yes, I would be, I think, more inspired maybe by, in my curatorial practice, by the standard notion of drawing. So how artists can redefine the definition of drawing using different materials, different techniques, and also how to address some, in terms of themes also, how to address some political and social issues in a way, using drawing, the notion of drawing as a space of resistance and solidarity.
I chose, actually, sorry, this is one of yours, isn't it? Yes. I chose this image. I don't know if it might be useful to talk about this case in particular, this exhibition, or do you want to go back, come to it later?
I mean, maybe just to introduce myself and how I, position basically my curatorial practice. I'm working as an independent curator, and after working for an institution for almost like 20 years, I decided to dedicate all my energy and passion to animal rights. So now I'm working for an animal rights association in Turkey, in Istanbul. And because in Turkey there's this really historical moment where like street animals are going through really different and challenging, situation. And I feel like responsible, this is an urgent moment, and how I can dedicate all my knowledge, experience into this field. And so we have been also collaborating with, artists, poets, with, thinkers from different disciplines to raise voices together. And so we have been organizing solidarity exhibitions where we together with artists, and basically drawing also becomes one of the most important mediums where artists express themselves and also raise their voices. So maybe that can be the the starting point, how to address social and political issues with basically with using different techniques of drawing, and how drawing becomes a space where the commons meet, where we all meet. We have recently published a poetry book where we invited like the great poets of Turkey. 21 poets responded to our invitation, and they wrote poems about like talking to their animals, to their companion animals. Sometimes they talk about their love, their grief, their excitement, their shared stories. And there were like 2 artists who responded to these poems by drawing. And in this book, you read the poems, and then, in a way, visually, they created this poem through drawing. So I think there are like multiple ways of thinking about drawing, and how, in a way, artists can basically use this technique and extend the notion.
Thank you so much. This is really interesting because I know that Isabel is also going to bring a sort of a more, I don't know if it's political perspective on drawings, like more recent acquisitions in the British Museum, but at least revisiting some ideas in older drawings and then bringing in current issues into them. So that's a really fantastic combination and answers that complete each other. So I'm going to go back and maybe, Isabel, ask you to introduce, sorry, this is, I don't know why we don't have the proper PowerPoint that I had kind of organized, I guess. Okay. So going back to the British Museum, so one of the questions I would have for you is, how does this collection of drawings that you're going to describe, so how many drawings, what kind of drawings does the collection have, but also how does it live in regards to because the British Museum has so many aspects to its collection. How does it live in that ecosystem of the collection also? And what might be the new directions that the collection is taking the cue from Bige, actually, and these current issues that kind of inevitably come into drawing?
Yeah, thank you. Those are some really great questions. So to sort of give you a brief description of the prints and drawings collection, there are about 2 million prints and 50,000 drawings from the 15th century to the contemporary. So yeah, more than enough to get your teeth into. About 2,500 of those are contemporary drawings from 1970 to now. And we've only been collecting modern and contemporary works sort of in earnest from about the 1970s onwards. Before that, it was kind of frowned upon to spend public money on contemporary works. So we might get them through gifts, but it wasn't something that we were kind of acquiring in a more focused way.
It was frowned upon to spend money on contemporary works and not drawing in particular, just contemporary within the British Museum.
Within the British Museum. So there was then quite a lot of catching up to do to kind of build a representative modern and contemporary collection. But yes, so we have artists from the old masters, particularly strong historical collections of Dürer, Michelangelo, Rembrandt, but then also modern masters like Bridget Riley, Paul Orego, Tracy Emin, and you can see the prints and drawings gallery here. We have about 4 to 6 exhibitions a year in this space, which is dedicated just to prints and drawings. But obviously that's only ever going to be a fraction of our collection. So the study room, which I think was on the slide just before this one, here, anyone can come and ask to make an appointment to view things in our collection. You don't have to be a student, you don't have to be a British citizen, you can just make an appointment and you can see what we have in our collection using our collections online, which I think was a couple of slides along here. So in 2021, we just finished a 30-year project to document and digitize everything in the collection. So everything in the collection is now available online. We're on the kind of last part of that project, which is imaging everything. So in the next 2 years, there should be an image of everything as well, apart from some of the things that are within copyright, but there will be an image for everything. So this is, again, the kind of online portal, and then the study room is the kind of physical portal. But yes, so in terms of how people access the study room, you can see here one of the drawing workshops taking place in the study room for about 6 years, from 2014 to 2020. There was a project funded by the Bridget Riley Art Foundation to encourage artists and art students to come to the study room and engage with the collection and make drawings in response to the collection, which is what you can see happening here. And then there were actually 2 exhibitions as well supported by that project, one of which was drawings from the Renaissance onwards, and the second of which just focused on contemporary drawing. So that exhibition, Pushing Paper, was in the Prints and Drawings Gallery in Bloomsbury, and then also toured around the UK as well. So we're a national collection, so that's one of the reasons that it's very important for the works to be seen outside of London as well as in London. So touring exhibitions are also a big part of what we do.
So in terms of the way the collections exists in the British Museum, and also how it creates synergies with traveling and with these workshops that you've just mentioned, are there any other connections that you might have in drawing through the British Museum, or that kind of are connected to it, that may be new kinds of relating to a collection? For example, research, thesis, a text being written. I'm thinking about the Smithsonian, for example, the Archives of American Art. They have, the oral histories, I think, where they record interviews with artists. That kind of animation or synergies around the collection. Is that something that is in the works, exists, or do researchers kind of contribute to it?
Yeah, I think the study room is host to researchers every day who are coming to engage with the collections. But again, I think that's really one of our collecting priorities for Prints and Drawings at the museum, is that these contemporary works, often by emerging artists. So one of the most recent projects that I worked on was acquiring drawings by emerging British artists using a grant from the Art Fund, is that they speak to the existing collections and kind of reactivate or re-energize them. It's not just that we're sitting on these canonical works which have a kind of fixed meaning and which are kind of unaltered and unalterable. They're very much works that are kind of in the process of being interpreted and given new meanings. So the acquisition project that I mentioned, which was collecting emerging artists, also showed these works with historical drawings from the collection to sort
which
of...
we will see, right? That's
Yeah.
the images that you brought. So before going into that, Bige, I would love to ask you about drawing in terms of the Turkish context. Is there a tradition of drawing? Because of course I was thinking of contemporary drawing when I invited you, but then I wondered why is there so much drawing in Turkey, and what is it connected to? Is there a tradition that it connects to? And if so, what would that be? Or is it a new form of expression that has gained autonomy recently?
Yes, thank you, Joana. Yes, there's a rich history of drawing in Turkey, and of course we can think about like calligraphy, miniature drawing, so different like traditional also forms of drawing. And also there are so many artists who work with drawing as their main medium, but there are also so many artists who have drawing in their practice, but who also kind of work with different, let's say, mediums, performance, installation, some kind of animated, let's say, drawings which can turn into some videos. So there are like really different interpretations of drawing, of practices of drawing, let's say, in Turkey.
One of the things that I also wanted to ask you was in terms of institutions. So the question that I asked Isabel which I would love to develop through the drawing think tank, is this idea that each institution is a little island within the country, and in the UK, there's so many. There's a drawing room. The British Museum has a very specific place, and Isabel's been doing quite a huge work in regards to contemporary drawing and the relation with its history. And then, you know, there's a drawing, I can never remember the name. Trinity Boy Award prize as well, which you were jury a few years ago. So what about in Turkey? Is that an institutional recognition of drawing? Are there drawing departments in the national museums? How does that work?
I mean, in Turkey, in terms of cultural infrastructure, there's not like any kind of specific focus on drawing. Of course, there are like, public museums, private museums who have like drawings in their collections, but there's not like a specific department, as you have been telling, and that's really amazing to have this collection. Neither in the Museum of Painting and Sculpture, which is a public museum, nor in the private museums, which have been created in the last, 15, 20 years. And also there is not like any specific curatorial expertise on drawing. There are curators who work with, of course, drawing artists, but there's not like any specific expertise. So it's, I think, more, again, an extended notion of practicing drawing curatorially and also institutionally. But the panorama of the artist is so rich and intense.
So now I have a very you simulated a question that I wasn't planning to ask actually. But is there any advantage of having an expertise of drawing? Because we had the case of Ricardo Nicolau, who comes from Soralvas and in Portugal. He was describing drawing as being natural. It's a natural thing, so natural that we don't really have drawing departments, but there's a lot of drawing in collections. It's very connected to concrete poetry and experimental poetry, graphic experimentation, asemic drawing, etc. So is there any advantage of having a specific take on a collection, or specifically, I mean, this is to both of you, because you feel that do you feel that there is something lacking if there isn't that expertise, and you conversely, is it constraining to actually look too much into the medium of drawing? Whoever wants to go first.
That's a super interesting question that I haven't really considered before, whether it's
Me neither.
constraining. I think definitely drawing is one of those mediums that really kind of opens itself up to a kind of trans-historical and approach. So I think, contemporary drawing speaks to historical drawing in a way that, because they are both kind of open-ended and often so similar in their means, in a way that historical and contemporary sculpture are not. I think having that kind of medium-based approach and specificity and expertise can create these really fruitful dialogues. But at the same time, I think, the fact that we're drilling down in this very kind of minute way, I think also being able to kind of open up across media is also something that's really beneficial. And I think, as you say, drawing is often the kind of first means of expression, the kind of the medium that has the sort of most economical means. A piece of charcoal or a pencil, and the world is your oyster. So, thinking about it in that more expansive way, maybe we kind of don't need to be held back by medium specificity.
And economy.
Yeah.
That was a great answer, by the way. I have to say, sorry, I hadn't prepared this question. So,
yeah, that's a great question and great answer. all I can add at this point, I think, I mean, again, you know, coming from my own practice, I'm interested in supporting cross-disciplinary approaches, practices. So, you know, I find a lot of inspiration in cross-disciplinary, you know, way of working, let's say. And at the same time, you know, from my conversation with some artists who work only with drawing in Turkey, I hear from them that they need some kind of, like, you know, support and expertise, maybe more. So I don't know if there's kind of a balance, you know, bringing together this kind of specific expertise from institutional structures, but also not fixing it into maybe like a specific, you know, I don't know, area, and trying to make it as open as possible.
So this idea that you had, I think, and the political question that I asked before, maybe would be a good opportunity to talk about the question of revisiting the older or masters, let's say, of the collection. I don't know exactly which image you want to work with, but Isabel, but I know that you kind of, I presume, looking into the images, that you were kind of bringing that perspective of how contemporary practices can inform maybe the masters and the collection in a historical perspective, but also bringing in more transversal direction into the collection might be an interesting way of looking at it through that specific perspective. So just let me know which image you want me to
I mean,
focus on.
Absolutely, I can start from here.
Right.
So,
do you want to?
oh, thank you, that's a great idea. So this is a British Guyanese artist called Hugh Locke, who we recently invited to work on a collaborative exhibition with the British Museum, where he was selecting objects from across the museum's collections. He's a sculptor and was making his own sculptures and works on paper in response. We've actually been collecting his works on paper for a number of years, which is how we came to develop this exhibition together. This was his installation, The Procession, that was at the Tate in 2022. But I just wanted to focus on this drawing, which we recently acquired, called Dandy. This is an early charcoal drawing from the 90s, and you can see here this kind of 18th century figure in a frock coat with this kuba mask, an African mask here with the feathers and cowries on it. Now, the figure here actually comes from this Hogarth engraving of the Four Times of Day, which we have a very strong Hogarth collection at the British Museum. But he took this child, and it's actually then Ottoman textiles that he's wearing. This incredible coat with tulips and crescent moons come from the Topkapi Palace collection. But Locke's intention here is to highlight the kind of global position of this 18th century British dandy. So wearing the Ottoman textile and the African kuba mask here, he's really highlighting the way that the riches of Britain, Britain's wealth in the 18th century was to a huge extent dependent on the transatlantic trade and enslaved people. So this mask is based on one that he actually saw at Africa 95, which was a festival of African art that he saw at the Royal Academy in 1995. But you can see here these cowries that are fixed onto the mask here. You can also see some faces that are peering out of them. But cowries turn up a lot in Hulock's work, and they were one of the currencies of the transatlantic trade in enslaved people. So, as you can imagine, when Locke's work was situated within the collection, selecting things from our African collections, from our European collections, it was really a way to make them kind of come alive. But again, I think the fact that it all started here with drawing, as you were saying, Bige, you know, it's there that these ideas are first coming out, are first finding their form. And he made some incredible works specifically for the exhibition. So this is actually one of his share certificate works. So Hulock takes original, in this case, 19th century share certificates. So these were actually the share documents. If you bought a share in a company, this is what you'd receive. This is what you'd receive. And he buys these online in auctions and then uses them as the support that he makes his drawings on. So you can see here, this was a share certificate for the Bank of Bengal that was set up in India in the 18th century after the East India Company had really been decimated through years of conflicts with Indian rulers such as Tipu Sultan. And Tipu Sultan was an Indian leader. His symbol was the tiger. And you can see some roaring tigers here kind of chasing the British lion, which is kind of gnashing its teeth. But again, the way that Locke is kind of taking the material of history and kind of embroidering it with these narratives, with these stories, and kind of illuminating it is, I think, just an incredible example of how you can use drawing to kind of bring those histories to life.
Can I just ask you, sorry, thank you. Bige, it was really interesting to go into that colonial perspective, actually, of drawing and how drawing can come and inhabit an older reference that is very connected historically to a kind of really strong sense of identity, national identity in a European country, and then at the same time how that identity is built through other identities. And this kind of movement, it feels like a sort of a reassessment that needs to go back and look at that archive. And I was struck by the images you brought, which seemed to be looking forward in some ways, or kind of like being traversed by current spaces and contemporary spaces. Do you want to talk a little bit about the images that you brought? You're very free to go through them. I don't know which one you want to focus on. No, I think you need to, oh yes.
Yes. I think I can start by this image. Deniz Aktaş, is an artist that I was very happy to collaborate with on many occasions. First one, it was in 2017 within the Istanbul Biennial framework of the Istanbul Biennial. And Deniz basically main medium is drawing, and he can spend like 6 months, 12 months on one single piece, and he draws. What he needs just is a pen and paper, and he can spend hours, like 12 hours, and does nothing else.
12 hours?
Yes, by day, concentrates. It's a very, concentrated way of working. And he comes up with these landscapes, a little bit uncanny landscapes. you don't know what is happening. This one is maybe more obvious because you see a kind of a tank. So it relates to this kind of this military, presence in a landscape. But in some of the drawings, you don't know what is happening, what has happened or what will happen. And he comes from Diyarbakir. So his village was evacuated when he was like 10 years old. And he has been, traumatized by the experience of looking from inside, but also, to the outside. So in his drawings, it's a way of basically dealing with the destruction of the landscape, with the decay.
And the yellow acquires such a daunting, ominous characteristic, doesn't it?
Exactly, and it's really recent that he started using colors. Before there were no colors in his drawings.
Is it always monochromatic?
Yes, and I don't know if I added another one, but there is another one in blue. Maybe another example, also looking at another landscape by Sevinç Altan, who is another great artist from Turkey, from Istanbul, and she works a lot with memory, what we remember, what we forget, and how we bring it to life, how we bring it to basically our practice, our work. And this basically drawing, which is titled The Whale, she remembers reading this article in a newspaper about the whales being drawn. And, the whales communicate with each other.
They invent languages, actually.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So you also see kind of these waves, sound waves, and how basically in our days, this communication is being closed by all these really big ships, and a lot to do with ecological crisis, climate crisis, and her work is very much also looking into basically our relationship with more than humans, how we can also reimagine a world with more than humans. But there's also a lot of void in her works, in her drawings. So it also kind of leaves you the space to imagine, how you feel this void. So in a way, in Deniz works, the landscape is full, and in Sevinç's work, there is always this kind of emptiness.
I was really struck by that in Deniz's work, how full the sheet is, the picture plane, and you were talking about sort of drawing being a way to kind of counter an act of erasure and this very kind of intensive way of working, drawing sometimes for 12 hours at a time, literally just constantly inscribing a sense of place. I thought that was a really kind of a poetic response.
And also the idea of recording, isn't it? Yes. Because you had those waves, and it's true that actually those communication between ships are affecting whales. They're depressed because they can't communicate. It affects the hearing of each other's, the sensing of each other's languages, and it's really isolating the animals. And that, recording of the ship's noises and also the motor and the kind of, it was really interesting to see that kind of like emptiness and fullness and time of the present, of current issues. I'm interested in knowing then the relation. You were talking about emptiness and fullness, and I think we're probably going to end the conversation soon because I know you have to leave. But you were talking about this obsessive drawing and the time that it took to make that drawing, that is talking about memory but also resonating with the present. And then there's a relationship between the two images that you have here that are very full and very scattered. The next one. Let me know why you chose to bring these two images.
So these I was actually thinking about in terms of some other works, which let me just see if they're this way or the other way. Maybe the other way. Yeah, that's okay. So these are, I should just talk about them first.
If you want to pick up another topic,
that's okay.
Please.
So this is a print by Anthony Gormley from his series Body and Soul, where he created a series of soft ground etchings, so taking an impression of different parts of his body with the soft ground plate. So here, to make this one, he literally pressed his lips onto the soft wax, so you can see the kind of wrinkles of his lips there. And it's quite hard to see on this image, but there are then sort of lines radiating around the mouth, as if you're kind of perhaps looking from the inside of a body out, which is an interesting kind of inversion. But I was thinking about it in relation to this print by Cornelia Parker, Spitting Sugar. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with the technique of spit bite or sugar lift for printmaking, but basically in using a sugar solution which you paint onto the plate, you then varnish over it, but then when you apply heated water, it melts the sugar solution and it lifts off, taking the varnish with it. So Cornelia Parker used this technique in a very different way by actually taking the sugar solution into her mouth and spitting it onto the plate before varnishing it. So that's how you get this amazing kind of cloud of droplets. But again, I was thinking about it in relation to the Anthony Gormley work, because really, again, it's like a kind of print of the inside of someone's body. It's the kind of inside coming out. And I was thinking about these in relation to these monotype drawings by an artist called Sin Y Kin, who was recently nominated for the Turner Prize. And their main practice really is drag performance, which they document with moving image. But the kind of drawing aspect of their practice is taking impressions of their drag makeup with these makeup wipes. So I think I can safely say these are the first makeup wipes that have been acquired for the British Museum.
Probably the only ones for quite a while.
Quite possibly. But you can see here, thinking about the Gormley print and the Cornelia Parker print, the fact that these are kind of direct impressions of the body. You can see the individual eyelashes here that have been caught in this impression. And thinking about them as monotype drawings, again, a unique impression. The fact that essentially it's a very old technique. You have the face as plate and the makeup as ink, but apart from that, it's really quite a traditional impression. And that again made me think about this tradition of the shroud of Saint Veronica, this idea that Saint Veronica handed a cloth to Christ on the way to Calvary, and he used it to wipe away his sweat and blood, and this created this miraculous impression. And I think this is a tradition that was particularly beloved of printmakers, the idea that they were creating these miraculous impressions, that they had some kind of connection to this miraculous image. And I think something that is very much echoed by Sinwai Kin's miraculous images, especially this one in Morning here. But yes, so it was the direct body prints that I was thinking of with the Gormley and the Cornelia Parker.
I love this perspective because you are being so provocative in the association of these two images, and by focusing on the technique, you kind of move the represented image away from this sort of clashing of time, and also of even the way the notion of drag can be, and the notion of and the miracle to the idea of the imprint. It's a very provocative idea, and I really love it. I know you're in a hurry, so I don't want to go overboard with time. So I'm going to ask you, both of you, thinking about your different contexts, what do you think is missing? What would you like to see more of in terms of contemporary drawing in general? What do you think would be useful, and what are the things that you think are now happening conversely in drawing that are exciting and that are new and they're kind of like turning points, maybe, if there are any, and then we will end on that last note.
Yeah, I think it's not new, but I would love to highlight the drawing room in London. You've mentioned them already, but it is also their anniversary year coming up. They are a non-profit contemporary drawing space in London. Some of you will know it very well. And they support themselves through a fundraising biennial where many internationally celebrated as well as emerging artists contribute drawings. It's a very well-loved institution, and so lots of amazing artists contribute drawings. And they run incredible programs as well in their community in Bermondsey in terms of drawing education. But yeah, they're a brilliant organization, and I think, yeah, more drawing-specific opportunities for kind of exhibition and education can only be a good thing. I think this is a whole other can of worms, but drawing education is something that I'm obviously really passionate about. But I think, for example, in the UK, something that is not necessarily part of art education, life drawing is basically, dropped from most courses, and it doesn't even need to be a kind of traditionally representative art form. That's just one technique and way of thinking. But yeah, so I think artists are using drawing whether it's being taught or not. So I think for drawing to be kind of rehabilitated and reincorporated into art courses is something that I would really like to see.
Thank you. Bige, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. Basically, my thoughts go with more international connections. So I think artists who work with drawing and with different mediums is really, really helpful, inspiring, and productive for them to be together, to present their works together, to have conversations, to be able to participate in some residency programs where they can really take their time and work together. So I would go for, more international connections as much as possible, and more dialogue, Also institutions, I hope that institutions would be more open to embracing, practices focusing specifically on drawing, but also extending, notions of drawings. So I'll quickly, run through really quickly some, works of artists that I wanted to mention, like Cansu Çakar, for example, who has studied miniature, traditional miniature at the university, but then who has brought together community work. And in some of her works, she works with communities, she works with, women, with LGBTIQ groups, with refugees, and she co-creates. And she also, in a way, creates this kind of learning workshops where everyone talks about their own histories, and then they draw together, they make things together. So, it's also
like a community aspect to drawing as well.
Exactly.
I was just interviewing New Barreto, who's an artist from Guinea who now lives here, and he was saying that when he was a kid he used to draw with his friends. So there's also, sorry, I know we must be quick.
No. I mean, I was just like willing to kind of emphasize this notion of drawing together and using the field of drawing in a way to to develop more conversations. I mean, Güneş Terkol is also an artist that I love collaborating on different projects. She's also an artist who works with drawing, but drawing on textile. So, I mean, this is not the best image ever, but this is a work that she has presented in Sao Paulo Biennial. The girl was not there. So she comes up with so many stories on these textile pieces, and she draws. She draws with stitch, she draws with thread, and basically she also, collaborates with Hazavuzu. She has a collective, Hazavuzu and Gugu, where she also collaborates with, multiple artists, and they create these performances. They make music with Güçlü Öztekin as well, that I also wanted to show a piece. This is, another like extended notion of drawing, where İnci Furni is, like drawing on a dress, on a cloth, on textile once again. And then, she also uses a lot of like performative gestures in her works, where she becomes a part of the drawing with her embodied, experience and practice. And I also wanted to show some like really quick images from İnci Eviner. Joana has here, also, collaborated with İnci and has done this amazing exhibition in Amiens. And İnci also presented, I think, her works here. And İnci Eviner is one of the most influential artists from Turkey. And
she has an exhibition coming up in London in
September.
September, right?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
It's Dirimart.
And drawing is really like in the center of her practice. So this is just one example from her sketchbook. While she thinks, she just draws, and then this is just like one piece to show how she also, incorporates this thinking of more than humans in her works, with this work titled Bird Mind. And she, this is a piece from basically a video work, Boys Underground,
video,
where
yes.
she has presented this work in Liverpool Biennial. And so you see how her mind works. Is in a way layered, multi-layered. There's so much also subconscious, you know, in her practice.
And provocation with the idea of boys underground.
Exactly.
Joseph Beuys, the famous German artist, and those two layers that she creates, and the animation is fantastic as well. Yeah.
So there's always this kind of layer, you know, above this line and below this line, underground, what is happening. You see so many like connections, so many threads, so many lines, so many stories come out of her works. And there's always this kind of performative also aspect in Inci's works. Another artist that I wanted to mention is Cansu Çakar. I have already shown one of her works, but this is a work that we commissioned as the Four-Legged City. Yes, my association, and she has basically adopted Chomi, you know, this dog that you see in this image, and she did this amazing drawing, also, you know, to support street dogs in Turkey. And Chomi, her dog, you know, sleeps and makes so many dreams.
I think we have to end
Yes.
here with,
I don't want to.
with the dog dreaming.
Okay,
I'm so sorry.
No. Okay, I want to end
This
with
is a perfect ending for
with an image of Güçlü Öztekin. I mean, I can talk about artists so many hours, so it's good that you stopped me, but I would like to end with this image of Güçlü Öztekin. He's also one of the artists that I collaborated for the poetry book, and we worked together on many exhibitions. And he works with a lot of like recycled materials, and he does these amazing notebooks, you know, drawings, and also this, you know, this painting. Where do we go from here?
Okay, good. Another good ending. Thank you so much. I'm really, as you can see, I'm a bit nervous because I know that Isabel has to go. You have to catch a train, right? So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you listening. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. everyone
Thank you for
coming.
your generosity.
Thank you both.
It was really wonderful. Thank you all, and this is the closing talk for the 19th edition of Drawing Now Paris. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the fair.